Hey everybody, I'm Coach Loretta here with Ornery Mule Coaching, and I'm here today with Nicole Kerneen and Kylee Van Horn, and we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition. We have a bunch of questions that have been submitted by our community, so thank you everyone that has submitted them. We will try to get through all of them, and if there's any other questions you have after, drop them in our comments and we will try to follow up later. So Nicole, do you want to introduce yourself just real quick?
Yep. Hey, I am Nicole Kerneen. I am a registered dietitian, a certified personal trainer, and a certified board specialist in sports dietetics. And I own Way of Life Nutrition and Fitness, and have been in private practice for 23 years with that, which is super, super fun and amazing. So I work with athletes and really almost everybody and anybody. So seeing all kinds of different fun cases, and it makes the job exciting. So
awesome. Thanks for joining us today. And we're lucky to have Nicole as part of our team for a few years now.
yes, no kidding. Yeah.
Time flies. All right. And Kylee, do you want to share a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm Kylee Van Horn. I'm an endurance sports dietitian located near Aspen, Colorado. I own Fly Nutrition, and we work with runners, skiers, triathletes, cyclists on sports nutrition topics. And I also write for Outside Magazine and Trail Runner.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining. So it's going to be fun to go through some questions and hopefully help some people out. I do want to note, though, that we do offer nutrition services with Kylee and Nicole. Anything from really intensive nutrition coaching down to just a race day fueling session. So if you have more questions, you want individualized answers, the best bet is to book an appointment, and you can go on our website, trailrun.coach, and you can get that going. Today, our questions are a little bit more general because it's a little hard to answer specifically when we don't really know you, but we're going to kind of give you that general knowledge. So the first question, does a surplus of carbs combined with a lack of protein and fat negatively affect a run?
Go ahead, Kylee.
I think it's important to emphasize that we want mostly carbohydrates before we go out and do a training session, because that's going to be our quickest, most efficient way to produce energy. Carbohydrates are broken down a little bit more easy in the body. And when we start running, blood is diverted away from our GI system. So we want to make sure that we are eating foods that are easier to digest. I will say that with a small percentage of athletes, sometimes having a little bit of protein and fat in that pre-run snack or meal can be helpful, because they experience something called rebound hypoglycemia. So their blood sugar goes up and then drops down quickly if they just have carbohydrates. So for some athletes, I think this is important to kind of make sure that you're dialing in your pre-run fueling options and then your fueling plan ahead of time. So then you can figure out, what makes me feel the best? What do I have the most sustained energy using? So we want to have mostly carbohydrates, though, before we go and do training sessions.
Thanks. Anything to add, Nicole?
I would just say again, kind of not quite knowing again precisely where this individual is coming from is I'm also curious if this person, it feels like they just don't overall get enough protein in their diet or overall get enough fat in their diet. That's what I'm kind of also wondering. So can that affect a run? Well, potentially, even though this person thinks they have whatever surplus means of carbohydrate, if there still isn't enough energy coming in, then yeah, that's gonna create a potential problem. So that would be the only thing that I would throw in there, just not knowing where the question is sort of coming from, and maybe looking overall at what's kind of happening completely throughout the whole day. Because to Kylie's point too, you sometimes you want to make sure you have a little bit of fat, a little bit of protein with your carbohydrate going in, prior to your run, not like a lot of protein, a lot of fat, and you want it to be little because of the digestive piece. So I'm just kind of curious if this person is talking about is this just a statement for right before the run, or is this an overall statement of what's happening in the course of a day? So that's the only reason why I threw that out there.
Okay, great. That's great. And that would be a good reason to book a appointment and get a little So the next question is, do you have any simple suggestions for getting in protein?
I would say too, I guess again, the question is always, where is there a problem? Like, what is the problem? So, simple suggestions would just be making sure that you're getting in protein at most meals, potentially most snacks too. Again, it just sort of depends on what you're trying to do. But if we're looking at what protein sources are, I mean, you name it, chicken, turkey, certain cuts of pork are super lean and wonderful. Fish more often. If you're more plant-based, beans, tofu. So I have a hard time answering questions, and I'm not quite sure like what the exact question actually is, based off of that.
Sure. Kylee, anything to add?
I think, yeah, taking a look at what is overall protein intake, where do you need to get, what are the dietary restrictions that someone has, and then thinking about ways that you could potentially sneak in extra, or do you need to bulk up like the amount that you're having? Say you're having a chicken breast, but you need to actually have a little bit more protein. Do you want to increase the volume of the chicken breast, or do you want to increase the protein in your snacks, or do you want to have like a side with your meal that has protein in it? So like thinking through, some of my athletes will like buy things at the store that they could add on to the side of their meal. So if like something's short, then they can like bulk it up. So like a yogurt on the side of their lunch or something could give them more protein. Or sneaking protein. I get a lot of questions about protein powders, like how much is too much? And I mean, I would not be relying on a protein powder every single meal. I really like for athletes to think about getting more whole food sources of protein, but 1 or 2 times a day, maybe sneaking in a little through a protein powder, like in your oatmeal, or you can bulk up a plant-based yogurt with a protein powder. So using it in that sense to kind of get a little bit extra in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question, what should I do for my nutrition race week leading up to a half marathon?
Again, sorry, every single time I try to answer, I have a question for the question. Well, I guess because of the fact that, leading up to a half marathon, you're not doing as much activity. So you want to make sure that you're taking in the same amount of volume though, because that's kind of the way in which the body is collecting glycogen and preparing the muscle for activity. So I wouldn't change too much of how you're eating, so to speak. I mean, obviously, if you're not, doing a run or something, you don't need like a pre and a post, but I would keep all other meals the same. Depending on if, again, sorry, there's so many ways in which you could kind of go with this. Sometimes with some of my athletes, I do have them add in, say, an additional carbohydrate, up to, 3 extra servings a day sometimes, depending on who they are, what they need. Everybody's needs are going to be very different. But you don't want to eat too differently from what you were doing in training leading up to an event in general.
Any thoughts, Kylee?
I think there's a lot of messaging or info out there about like doing a carb increase before a race for performance benefit. And I think for a half marathon, it's kind of it really depends on the athlete and how long they're thinking it will take them as to whether it might really be beneficial to do much of a carb increase for something like that. If you're doing anything over a half marathon, a carb increase in the days leading up to the race might be more of an option for you. In which case, looking at like 2 to 3 days out from an event, increasing your carb intake or carb load overall, and maybe decreasing down your protein and fat a little bit. But I actually recommend that if athletes are going to do that, they practice ahead of time, so that they know like if their stomach can handle it and how much carbs they want to do, and dial in those details. I think for something like a half marathon though, the day before, trying not to, eat a bunch of spicy foods or new foods, all of that, is a good idea. And then, making sure that you're not doing a lot of fiber. So maybe you reduce down your fruit and vegetable consumption, or you cook your fruits and veggies or have them blended in a smoothie instead. Maybe not doing as many whole grains like your whole wheat bread and quinoa and whole wheat pasta. Maybe you switch to a more like white pasta. And then making sure you're hydrating. So hydrating with some electrolytes. So not just straight water. If you do just straight water, that can kind of sometimes flush out your electrolytes and then cause like a little bit of an imbalance. So we just want to make sure that we maybe include, a little bit extra, like a noon tab or two or something, or like a scoop of scratch or two the day before.
Okay, thank you. All right, how about how should you fuel during a marathon? How often, or a half marathon? How often and what type of fueling?
I think too, again, it really just depends on the pace in which you're running, basically. So I have a lot of individuals where, for most events, I usually have my athletes starting to refuel about 45 minutes into the actual race, and then usually 20 minutes every 20 minutes thereafter, just to maintain some consistency. However, I do have some individuals who do half marathons who have like a lot of gut issues, or they're going at a much slower rate. So we can start refueling still at that 45 to maybe an hour mark. And then we're refueling every half hour after that. So again, it really just depends on that individual and your pace, your heart rate, even the course itself. Is it extra hilly? I mean, what kind of substrate is going to be, utilized? And so what do we need to be fueling with? So, typically then what the source will be is I shouldn't say anything, but, what would be most tolerable, obviously, to your system, but, it will be primarily in a carbohydrate form. Since a half marathon isn't as long as an event as a, full marathon, we don't have to be as, picky about that, I guess you could say.
Great. Thank you. Anything else to add to that, Kylee?
I think the main thing that I see with this, a lot of people ask about like using whole foods as like a fueling source.
Mhm.
And for a half marathon, I don't really recommend using whole foods. You're likely going to be going faster than your typical like training pace. So when you go at a little bit higher intensity, it's like harder to break down the nutrition you're taking in. So trying to figure out, could I actually use like a gel or a chew, or at the very least like Spring Energy or Muir Energy, like food blend type things, so that they're going to be more easily taken in and like integrated into the body for energy production. So like half marathon and marathon, depending if it's road or trail too, I guess you have to consider that, but like trying to skew more towards the gels and chews and things. And then after that, like longer events, then maybe integration of some like whole food sources or something. But everything else, Nicole said, like the timing and all of that, you still need to fuel and regularly.
Right. Okay, awesome. What are some good fats I can add easily to my diet?
Avocados are a great fat. Olive oil is a great fat. Even grapeseed oil can be a really great fat too. I'm a really big fan of avocado oil, actually. I think that's a really excellent source. Any kind of like a whole nut butter. And what I mean by that is a nut butter that's just simply nuts and salt. There isn't any additional oils added to those. You want to watch out for some of that because some of those other additional oils are actually highly inflammatory. So just keeping an eye out on that. I'm just utilizing nuts and seeds in general. Those can be great fat sources as well. And even adding, I mean, there's nothing wrong with utilizing saturated fats either on the occasion, butter or coconut oil on occasion, just not as much of those, obviously.
Okay. Anything else, Kylee?
Not a ton extra, just like I think easy ways to add fats are thinking about like, can I sprinkle some chia seeds or flax or something on things that I'm already doing? That can be a really nice way to get extra omega-3 fatty acids. So like kind of like with the protein question we answered earlier, like could I sneak some things in the things that I'm already doing? And I find that like drizzling olive oil on things, putting avocado in a smoothie, chia and flax on oatmeal or salad or whatever, like those can be easy ways to get some healthy fats in.
Okay. Let's see. The next one, do you have any tips on how I can stay consistent with getting in daily calories, macros?
I think just planning, being prepared around that. I have some clients who just have a really difficult time staying on schedule. So I have them setting timers for them to drink even, as well as eat. So, depending on what you need, breaking that down into 4 meals a day, or again, I don't know if you're training or not, then that's a little different too, but staying consistent, optimally eating every 3 to 4 hours. So, and depending on how many calories you need, then, taking those 4 meals, if that's what it ends up being, and dividing by how many calories you need in a day and trying to be consistent with making sure that every meal has that amount of calories. And I mean, it's one way to stay consistent. Otherwise, again, I'm not quite sure what more this person was intending and or what they're running into as far as why they were asking the question. So.
Okay. Kylee, anything to add?
I think, yeah, I usually do like the calendar reminders, the pop-ups on the computer, alarms can be helpful. I think taking a like cooler, even if you work from home, and like packing some things in there so that you've got that at your desk. The other thing might be like stocking your car or your desk with snacks. So like thinking about little strategies that, might help you in case you get busy. I'm guessing maybe that's what this person's asking, is like they're getting busy and then forgetting to eat or something. But yeah, you kind of have to, like Nicole said, you kind of have to figure out like how much you need to get in for your different days of training, and then what does that look like, windows of time wise, and then really like setting up something that works for you. Like some people do better with visuals and others do better with like a lot like auditory reminders and things.
Okay, awesome. What is the best post-race meal?
There is no best. It's what you can tolerate, but primarily getting in, as much carbohydrates, some protein, just a little bit of protein at the time, a little bit of fat. I mean, when it comes to post-race meal, I mean, ultimately there's going to be a couple of meals that are considered kind of post-race, depending on the length of that particular race. So like a lot of people that I work with, just because gut just doesn't really want anything immediately afterwards, although sometimes some people are like, yeah, I guess I am ready to eat, but if you are one of those individuals, then getting in a really, really well-balanced smoothie, getting in liquid nutrition. And there's a lot of bottled smoothies you can get out there too, that are absolutely perfect as a post, source of fuel. And then actually having a regular meal, say about 2 hours after that, once cortisol's come down, stomach has kind of, the body has cooled down. So the blood is now ready to digest, or the blood is back into your digestive tract. So it's ready to digest again. So, but always considering, you need an ample amount of carbohydrate. And again, everybody's needs are going to be different. Some protein and some fat. Not like protein initially, like right away, isn't the most important thing. You need a little, but you don't need a huge amount of that. So it's getting in enough carbohydrate to really start that recovery appropriately and bring down that inflammation.
Okay, thank you. Kylee, anything?
Not a ton. It's just thinking about like, when is this person's next race? Because if it's like, oh, I'm racing another race in 5 months, I'm going to be taking like 2 weeks off after my 100. I'm not saying don't pay attention to post a race recovery meal like composition, but sometimes I feel like we focus on that, so these guidelines so much that it's like we lose sight of, hey, what sounds good? Like, can I have something that I like haven't had in a while or in like really craving right now? Like Nicole said, like, yeah, we want to try to get protein and carbohydrate in, but at the same time, like, yeah, have a good meal at a restaurant and kind of enjoy it and have what you want, I feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one's sort of a big one. I have trouble with my body holding a chiropractic adjustment. It can be related to diet issues. I know that protein is important, especially for athletes. Is there anything else I can add to my diet to keep my muscles healthy enough to hold my bones in place? I am doing strength and mobility 4 times a week and training for a 100-mile race.
So to me, when I see this question, what I'm kind of sensing is that this individual might be experiencing just a lot of tightness in the muscle. And so obviously, if you go in for an adjustment, if the issue about going in for an adjustment and then not treating the muscle at the same time is the fact that a lot of times that adjustment won't hold, because when those muscles are that tight, it pulls the bone back to where it was. I mean, it's just structurally how it works. So this individual may want to consider actually either getting some manipulation done around those areas that are going to be adjusted prior to getting the adjustment or after getting the adjustment. And that will actually help the two systems work together. So that would be one of the recommendations. And then the other piece would be I'm not quite sure what this individual's diet is consisting of, but to me, if muscles are that tight, I'm thinking of like, magnesium. Is there enough magnesium? Is there enough calcium kind of coming in, even potassium? I mean, these are the things that kind of nurture the muscle and allow the muscle to stay, flexible and to relax as well. Same with like B vitamins. Is there too much stress going on? So that's going to affect like the nervous system, which also affects the muscular system. So these would be things that I would be kind of curious about, but just kind of throwing it out there that there might be a few things to kind of look at.
Okay, that's good. Sometimes we have to look deeper.
Yeah.
Kylee, anything, or should we go to the next?
No, I'm good. We can go to the
Okay.
next.
Okay, the next one is, what should I eat to recover properly after a race? Oh, we already sort of had that one, so let's pass that one up. Sorry. Do you need to adjust your protein intake with higher training volumes?
I think with higher training volumes, you are just going to require more energy in general. And so does that mean that, your more energy should be a variety of energy, but sure, that might mean you might need a little bit more protein depending on what that is. But not always. I think everybody's going to be a little bit different. I think overall, it's not just isolating protein. It's making sure you have enough energy in general to support the volume that's going in. If that volume also means then that there's more speed work or there's, more tissue tear up, then we might need to increase that protein if that piece isn't there, or if we're kind of on the lower spectrum of the protein range. So it would be a matter of looking at both of those things in order to determine that.
Okay. Kylee, anything to add?
Usually, yeah, I mean, overall, you're going to be increasing overall energy intake with training volume and intensity. And that includes macronutrients, your carbs, protein, and fats. And I usually try to teach athletes like how to make those adjustments. And higher protein is something that is part of that. But so are carbs and so are fats. So, trying to figure out like how to make all of that happen when you are doing increased training, when you might not have as much appetite, etc. So anyways, yes, I do think you need more protein on heavier training days.
Okay. Okay, and our last question is, do you need to adjust or decrease electrolyte intake with winter running?
For me, I'm always looking at what's their overall sweat rate still. So I mean, if you're a heavy sweater, then we're still going to need to look at potentially keeping things the same. It might come down a little bit, but we have to kind of look at the whole picture really, instead of just isolating, do I adjust my electrolytes?
Okay. Kylee, what do you have to add?
Yeah, usually I will have athletes do some like fluid loss testing in the summer versus winter, and then your electrolytes follow your fluid losses. So, if it decreases in the winter, then your electrolytes are going to decrease as well. So just becoming more dialed with your overall like fluid and electrolyte regimen, I think is important, versus just saying like, oh yeah, I just decrease or I just increase, like
Right.
by how much, or get a little bit more precise. And that's what Nicole and I can do with athletes, is help you get more precise with things.
Nice. All right. Well, a lot of great answers and questions that came in today. Thank you guys for answering them. Before we go, do either of you have anything fun coming up? Exciting?
I'm offering to all of my people or anybody who wants to join in. I'm also doing an all nutrition Q&A coming up at next Saturday, 10 a.m. Central Time. It can be found on my Make an Appointment listing at my website, or you can find it on my Facebook page as well.
Thank you. Anything for you, Kylee?
Yeah, we got I have a sweat masterclass coming up. So if you want to dial in
That goes in good.
hydration and electrolytes for your fueling plan, I'm doing that next Wednesday. And it's also available on recording, even if you can't make the live. So I'm doing that. And then my colleague and I have an eating disorder recovery monthly group that we're going to be running starting in October. So that's something new that will be exciting.
Okay, great. Well, if any of you have any questions more about that, shoot me an email, loretta.ornerymuleracing@gmail.com, and I can get you directed to Nicole or Kylee for the things that they have coming up. So thanks everyone for coming, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.